On this glorious December 15 morning, I'm going to offer you some Christmas gifts today. A couple of a book and a movie that might be worth looking at over this Christmas season. Certainly one of them is a Christmas movie, so better to watch it before Christmas Day or even on Christmas Day. But first to the book. I had a really great conversation with some millers yesterday, and we got talking about the way in which the more we explore different ideas and different fields of expertise, anything from, it could be cooking across to electronics, as Hudson put it, the more that you explore the world and different aspects of the world and nature and reality, the more actually you see how many things connect. You actually see dots that seem unrelated in one field actually start to connect in other fields, and the more you explore, the more you get to see that. And we kind of talked about how it's a good thing for us to continue to grow and to explore new areas of thinking and gain new skills and insights and expertise as we go, as we grow, as we move on in life. That I think Hudson put it that we really should be challenging ourselves. I don't know what sort of regularity you might want to do this, but if you become an expert in cooking, or at least get a good understanding of that, then challenge yourself to learn something very different. And as I said, his example was electronics, which is about as different from cooking as you might think, so that you grow and you continue to explore new aspects of life and reality that perhaps have passed you by to this point, and to not get stuck in our own little areas of expertise. So this book I share with you now, a couple of people who I consider to be pretty intelligent have found it kind of difficult to read, and I think that the reason for it might be the way that this writer thinks. I don't think it's a lack of ability to think, but more a way in which this particular person thinks. And so I offer it to you not only because it's one of my favourite books, but also because it might be one of those sorts of writers and ways of writing and thinking that might be a little different for you too, and therefore would be a good thing to challenge you with. So it's a book called Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. This is the copy that I've got. His name is Gilbert Keith Chesterton. He lived in 1874 to 1936. So this is we go back almost 100 years now as far as when this book was produced and this man lived. Now I want to give you an example out of this book of the way that he thinks and the way that he writes, to give you a bit of a taste, a little bit of a précis. So bear with me. I'm going to read a little to you, and it's one of my favourite passages, one of my favourite quotes, and I've used it pretty extensively, and in particular a talk that I developed that really kind of was, this quote had a huge amount of influence over. So he starts, "The sun rises every morning. I do not rise every morning, but the variation is due not to my activity, but to my inaction. Now, to put the matter in a popular phrase, it might be true that the sun rises regularly because he never gets tired of rising. His routine might be due not to a lifelessness, but to a rush of life. The thing I mean can be seen, for instance, in children when they find some game or joke that they especially enjoy. A child kicks his legs rhythmically through excess, not absence of life. Because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free, therefore they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, 'Do it again.' And the grown-up person does it again until he's nearly dead. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. But perhaps God is strong enough to exult in monotony. It is possible that God says every morning, 'Do it again' to the sun, and every evening, 'Do it again' to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately but has never got tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite for infancy, or of infancy. And here's the line I particularly love, this wonderful turn that G.K. Chesterton does over and over again. For we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we. That's just an example of how clever he is, not only with words, but the way that he thinks. It's really unorthodox, even though the book is orthodoxy. The way that he thinks and presents ideas and the ideas that he has and ways he looks at life has a sense of freshness and a kind of an unorthodox approach to explaining the orthodoxy of Christianity and trying to help readers and certainly of his generation. And you'll find a lot in his book. He references a lot of current writers, because a lot of what he was doing, he was writing for newspapers and critiquing and challenging and battling other writers who were writing into the newspapers as well, atheists and people who were rational men, he calls them, in a sort of a disparaging way. He's a very rational thinker, but he doesn't like rationality as if it's a god in its own right. But he has this freshness of thinking and a freshness of approach, and the way that he writes and the images that he evokes, I've found really helpful. And so I offer that to you as a book. There's a lot of stuff in there that you'll find really kind of fascinating, and there could well be some things in there you find very challenging, the way that he talks about life and theology. Now remember too, he comes from a Catholic background, and for those in a more Protestant church background, there are different ways of thinking about theology. And again, I think that's really helpful for those of us who are Protestant. We are actually all Catholic in the sense of we are all part of one Catholic, meaning universal church. And to have a grasp or an understanding of the goodness that does exist within the Catholic Church, or the Anglican, or any other denomination for that matter. Every denomination, every movement has its absolute gems that we could all benefit from. So that in itself might be useful. So anyway, I offer that to you as a Christmas gift that you might give to yourself or consider giving to someone else. I suspect it is probably something that you might want to give to yourself rather than something else, unless you know that there is someone who would really love that book. So there you go, Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton, a well worth reading. The second thing, the movie. I watched it last night with my daughter. It's called Klaus, and it's on Netflix. At least I think it's on Netflix. It could be Disney Plus, but I'm pretty sure it's Netflix. And the story is sort of told kind of whimsically about, I suppose in some ways, where does the idea of sending a letter to the North Pole to Santa for a gift come from? And so it kind of tells that story, and really is kind of a form of an origin story for the person of Santa Claus and the gift giving. Now, of course, as a Christian, I have to set aside what I know to be true about the story of Christmas and where Christmas really comes from, that it's a Christ-centered story, that the gift-giving nature of Christmas has in some relationship to the wise men who came and gave gifts to Jesus, and in fact a very real historical figure too, who became famous for giving his riches and his gifts to others. And there's a wonderful book I could even perhaps reference that next week maybe, on the potential, what might well be the potential origin story, the true origin story of the Saint Nick story, as opposed to the Christ and Christmas story. So don't come to this as looking for a true Christian story of Christmas, but there is something very lovely in the story that I definitely think is absolutely the Christian and Christmas message, and that is a selfless gift can inspire and will in fact inspire something in kind. That threaded throughout the movie is an idea that if you give selflessly a gift to another, it will have a knock-on effect. It will begin a snowball effect that it can't help but return in some way, with something beautiful happening somewhere down the line. Now, it might not happen directly to you, but it has an impact. And the way that the story is framed, this young man is sent by his father, kind of a growing up exercise, to a distant land that he discovers is torn down the middle between this age-old feud between two families, and they only exist to hate each other and to fight one another. And this young man, in order to, meet the standard that his father has set him, and to meet a target and to meet the goal that his father has set him in order to go back home, he actually has to find a way to bring some harmony and peace to this very fractured environment. and this is where the kind of gift giving stuff starts to come from. And now he's a postman, so he's the deliverer of gifts, and it's a really sweet way of telling the story. And again, don't take this as don't put your Christian hat on and come to the story with that. But if you do have a good sense of orthodoxy and understand the Christmas and Christian story, you will find that there is definitely all the good values and morals that you would expect to find in a genuine Christmas story in this one. You just might need to be a little bit of a detective in that respect. So I offer that to you. It's a wonderful one to show and to watch with your children. I think it's compared to a lot of other Christian Christmas stories, which have elves and Santa Claus and lots of kind of weird Christmas magic. This one has a lovely touch of magic to it, which I think is quite fitting for Christmas, because there's a real magic to the Christmas story as a Christian, and yet tells it without kind of chintzy, cheesy slogans and imagery, the kind of stuff that we're so used to with tinsels and lights. This is something quite different and lovely. And the other thing that I love about it is the images. I mean, it's just beautifully drawn, beautifully put together, and a really well-told story. So I offer that to you, recommend it to you very highly as a family movie to watch this Christmas. Klaus, as in Santa Claus. So there you go, a couple of things for you to take home and hopefully learn some more from and explore and just enjoy. So Merry Christmas. See you next week. Peace.